Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. It's the Asian swing, ladies and gentlemen. One of the more interesting times of the year. Some strange things happen during the Asian swing. The matches are being played when I am sleeping, which means that I'm watching a lot of matches on replay. But here we are. There's much to discuss. A few things I want to go back on. I will read your comments at the end of this video. Most of the comments, or I think all of them, come from my last video on Borna Coric beating Roger Federer, 5 reasons why. Before that, I want to jump into something that really happened, I think, over 2 weeks ago now, but I haven't been able to discuss it, and that is the Feranando Verdasco ball person incident. As a former ball boy, I feel like maybe I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this, so I do want to talk about that. But first, Novak Djokovic, Shanghai champion after defeating Borna Coric in the final. Going off memory, I believe it was 6-3, 6-4, something of that sort. But Djokovic wins Shanghai without dropping serve. It's the first time he's ever done that. He looks so sharp right now, where, you know, I can't say that, I don't think anyone really should be surprised that he won Shanghai easily. The conditions suit him, and he is back to the form that we saw him in 2014, 2011, 2015, all dominant Novak Djokovic years that I just mentioned, and he's right there. The backhand down the line is firing. The return is firing. The defense is firing. You got to win the point 3 times to finally break his defense. He's serving, as I said, in drop serve. The percentages that he's serving at is incredible. The second serve is solid. He's putting the ball exactly where he wants to put the ball, which I want to get into probably a little bit more. I don't want to dive really too deep into this match against Borna Coric because there was no way Coric was going to win. And it's because, you know, it's one of those matches. I know sometimes we have this where there was no path to victory because there's nothing really that Coric did or could have done that was going to be successful against Djokovic. I thought Coric played well. I think he brought it. I think Coric obviously looked great all week, but I really do think Coric played a good match. It's just there's nothing he could have done, and I don't think there is anything really that Roger Federer could have done in his current form either. So that's where we're at right now. How do I feel about it? I'm very consistent, and Nole fan will get mad at me. Djokovic fans won't be happy. Nadal fans weren't happy with me after the French either. I mean, I'm very consistent here. I want mystery. I don't want to see a player winning tournaments easily. I never want to see that ever. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's Federer. Like, you know, when Federer won Wimbledon 2 years ago without dropping a set, it was boring. When Nadal won the French this year, it was boring. And when Djokovic comes into every tournament the clear favorite and wins, it's boring. So you can get mad at me, but I'm very consistent. I'm always rooting for competitiveness. And right now, we're kind of back where we were before Novak fell off a cliff and Rafa and Roger emerged in 2017. That's kind of where we're at right now. And there's no Andy and Del Potro. Very, very sad news on this front with Juan Martín Del Potro breaking his patella, which is the kneecap. And I don't know if it was his right knee or his left knee, but now Del Potro is going to be out for a while, and Del Potro had picked up a head of steam, so there's another contender out. We're going to get into Roger Federer and how he's not looking very good at the moment. Rafa is not healthy. He was dealing with the knee problems during the U.S. Open, and he's not back from those knee problems. He will be back, but right now he's not. You got a guy like Sasha Zverev, who hasn't really improved this season from last season. At least the results don't suggest he's improved. So that's where we're at. We're in a place where Novak Djokovic is going to come into any tournament, and it's going to be really, really surprising if he doesn't win that tournament. It's going to be really surprising if Novak doesn't win the ATP Finals. It's going to be surprising if he plays Paris if Novak doesn't win Paris. That's just how it's going to be. That's how it is right now. Okay. Let's watch this point. Because I thought that this was one point where Novak showed kind of vintage Djokovic. And I guess first I'll just sit back and let you guys watch this. This is a point that stood out to me. So first the return. It's going to be a classic stretch return by Novak, and look how deep it is. Now, Coric hit such a heavy forehand here, and one of the things, I'm going to restart the video, one of the things I want to focus on, Coric hit such a heavy forehand. Look how deep that is. Look how heavy that is. I have talked about how when Coric gets his feet set, he's able to hit his forehand very, very heavy, and he does that here. Watch how Novak's able to still keep it out of the middle. And that's what I talked about with Roger Federer, how Federer wasn't able to do that. Novak keeps, despite Coric's weight of ball, Novak keeps the next shot out of the middle. Let's play this one more time. This forehand, very impressive forehand by Novak. And then he keeps the slice backhand deep, and on this next ball, the fact that Novak pulls this down the line, I mean, this is one of those shots, and one of the reasons I picked this point as the point to show is this is one of those shots where I don't know how many players in the world can pull this shot off. Maybe Kei Nishikori, maybe, but it's really just Novak. This is a very, very special backhand down the line, and it's a situation where most players will go cross court, and I want you to watch Borna Coric here. Watch him lean the wrong way. You see him have to plant hard there, and kind of he has to plant hard on his, let me think, his left foot, because he's leaning left, and then all of a sudden the backhand goes line, and he has to kind of readjust there, and then the placement is perfect. He hits it so solid. It's just such an incredible shot that Novak hits there. So I think that Novak showed his defensive skills, keeping the ball out of the middle of the court and hitting with depth, and then turning it into offense on that backhand down the line, a shot that only he can make. And that's all I'm going to say, really, about Djokovic and Coric. I'm not going to dig too deep into it, because there's not much there. Maybe I'll talk about a little bit about Coric in context of, you know what, there's a comment that talks about this, so I'm not. So I'm going to move on to Verdasco. I'm going to talk more about Borna Coric, but that's going to come up a little bit later. First, I want to play this Verdasco clip that really a lot of people were buzzing about. A lot of people were talking about when this happened. And let me see if I can make this full. No, I can't make it full screen. So we're just going to have to deal with that. But Verdasco asks for the towel from the ball person, and he scolds him. I'm not sure exactly what the ball person does wrong here. It looks fine to me, regardless of if the ball person, did anything wrong or not. You can't treat a ball kid like that ever. There's no excuse. And I'm not going to spend too long admonishing Feranando Verdasco, because I'm just wasting everyone's time. No one's defending him, so what am I really saying here? What Verdasco did, inexcusable. But I want to talk a little bit about the response, and this is where I feel like I can provide perhaps a more unique perspective. John Wertheim is someone who I'll pull up here. respected. I respect him a lot as a journalist, and I'm a fan of his work. But he says, and I saw a bunch of people kind of taking this away from the incident. He says, we are going to look back at ball kids handling the effluvia-soaked towels of millionaire pro athletes, much as we cringingly recall child labor in the textile mills, factories, and mines during the Industrial Revolution. So what Wertheim is saying is that ball people, the institution of ball people is equivalent to child labor in factories during the Industrial Revolution. And I understand that perhaps there's some exaggeration, some room for exaggeration, as he's just trying to make the point that the institution is outdated or somehow unethical. I challenge that. I don't agree with that. And my response to that is, I was a ball boy, and to me, it was some of the greatest times of my life, and an absolute privilege to do this job. So to see so many people say this isn't right, the institution of ball people is unethical, or ball people shouldn't handle the towel, which was a very popular response to what Feranando Verdasco did, that was hard to reconcile for me, because ballboying is amazing, and I loved it. I'll say this about the players. No one was rude to me. That's not true. One person was rude to me. I ballboyed for 2 years, qualifiers, and then 2 weeks after that. So 6 weeks in total. About 4 matches a day. So 4 times, I'm not going to do the math, but hundreds and hundreds of players. Only one was rude to me. I'm not going to say who it was. It was a female player. She was Italian. She's retired now. I don't think it's important to say who it was. And I don't really care. I think that it's important not to diminish the effects of what Verdasco could have on a kid. I mean, certainly he made the kid feel terrible. And even me, and I'm thick-skinned, I like to think. Not, I'm secure. I'm somewhat confident, I think. But even for me, that would shake me up if a player was upset with me like that and yelled at me. It would shake me up for sure. So I'm not diminishing that, but I think that there was a major, large-scale overreaction to what Verdasco did, as if there's a systematic problem. I think the main point I want to make is that I did not experience the systematic problem, and I don't see the systematic problem. The simple solution is players shouldn't be fill in the blanks to ball kids. And they're generally not. And if they are, they can be handled accordingly. But there is no problem here. In terms of handling the towel specifically, I mean, it's not that terrible a job. I mean, it's fine. It's a little sweat. I mean, can we lighten up here? Are we that soft that we can't hold a sweaty towel? I mean, it's fine. It's completely fine. And that's all I'll say about that. Let's go on to the comments. All these comments are from the Federer Coric 5 Reasons Why video. George Ayodil, I don't know why I try to read these names, because I just botch them, and you guys can just read them. He says, so in this long analysis, nothing is said about age. First of all, that was a short analysis, but let's move on from that. Federer is 37 years old, for crying out loud. He's done more than well enough getting this deep in tourneys, and also considering the amount of matches he's played over his career, all the wear and tear. Federer just can't come out week in and week out and perform tirelessly. He's skipping tourneys now and generally just being competitive enough to keep his sponsors happy. A couple things here. One, there's a few things to unpack. The first thing, I'll address the last sentence, to keep his sponsors happy. If Roger Federer was playing to keep his sponsors happy, he would have retired by now. There's no way Roger Federer is playing to keep his sponsors happy. And there's no way Roger Federer is playing Shanghai to keep his sponsors happy. Shanghai is a Masters event. Shanghai is an event with good facilities. And, these players want to play Masters tournaments. I mean, this is not a chore to play Masters tournaments. Do you guys understand? If you don't understand the economic construct of tennis, this could be something that's not intuitive for people. But to play in a Masters tournament is a huge privilege for professional tennis players. For many players, it can be the highlight of their career. Federer's not doing this to keep his sponsors happy. He's playing Shanghai because he wants to play Shanghai. And if he was in a place where he was just playing to keep his sponsors happy, he will have retired. I already said that. Okay. The next point, I guess, is that Federer can't come week in and week out performing tirelessly. To me, that's kind of hypocritical because that's why he skips tourneys. He skips tournaments so that he can play tirelessly when he's playing. That's the whole idea. He's not going to enter a tournament and say, well, let me make the semifinals, but I'm not going to have the gas tank to go anything past that. I saw a lot of people say, well, Federer isn't trying very hard. It's Shanghai. Who cares? Federer said before the tournament that Shanghai is the priority after the U.S. Open. It's the most important tournament to Roger Federer. Now, I find that surprising because I think the ATP Finals, I would think that would be more important than Shanghai. But Federer said that Shanghai is the priority. So either Federer is a liar, which I don't think he is, or you can't have it both ways. The point is, I think Federer cares about Shanghai, and I think he's trying very hard. And that's it. 37 years old. Sure. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I'm analyzing the match. I'm not analyzing the state of Roger Federer's career. So if I was talking about the question, will Roger Federer win another major? If that was what I was discussing in the video, then I would have mentioned that he's 37. But when I'm talking about why Borna Coric beat him, I'm not going to talk about his age. So that is that. Let's go on to the next comment. Thank you for that one. This one's super long. I'm not going to read all of it. And just as a general statement, the shorter you keep, I'm not going to say you should write shorter comments because you guys have stuff to say and you should say all of it. But it is easier if you either put it in separate comments, or I'm just saying I'm more likely to read comments on the show if they're shorter because they're just a lot more digestible. I want to skip to the second part of Kevin Joel's question, and it is about Federer's scheduling. He says, sort of off topic, but as a Fed fan, you know what? I'm actually going to read both parts. I'll start with the second part. As a Fed fan, I really want to see him play Bercy now. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't play. All this rest and time off clearly isn't helping him that much anymore, so I might as well make the hay while the sun is still at least partly shining so far as the condition of his body is concerned. And Bercy is an indoor hardcourt Masters. Is it a Masters? I'm not sure if it's a Masters. The kind of conditions that Federer should excel in. And he hasn't won a Masters tournament all year. Delpo and Nadal aren't playing in it. Okay. So I would say, again, I don't think Federer thinks about money anymore as a motivation. So I don't think making the hay would have anything to do with Federer's scheduling. But the reason I wanted to read that part of this comment first is because I think there is an interesting question now. Should Roger Federer be playing more? To me, it's very clear he's lost a certain swagger. He's lost a certain confidence. And I see him taking less risk. I see him not hitting his finishing shots with as much consistency. I'm seeing him not hitting as close to the line. I'm seeing him second guess his shot selection. And that doesn't mean he's playing terribly, But there's certainly a swagger in his game that is missing and has been missing for most of the season. And I think that all comes from confidence. Tennis is just a weird sport where even if you've won 20 majors, it doesn't mean your confidence is sort of a stable entity. No players have unwavering confidence. You're only as confident as your last shot, as your last set, as your last match, as your last week. The further and further you get, the less and less impact it has on your confidence. Tennis players are rooted in recency. But from a long-term perspective, with that being said, Federer's missing that swagger. And I do think that it's hard to say that he is doing himself favors by not giving himself any sort of rhythm in his schedule. He's got to stay healthy. So I think that it's something that I try to stay away from saying Federer should play, Federer shouldn't play, because it's really about his body. But I think there's something to be said for gaining a little confidence. And there's something to be said for playing until he does that. Playing more until he's able to do that. First part is, how has Coric not been more successful in other tournaments so far in his career? Tough question for me to answer. But I would say the physical isn't a problem and the mental isn't a problem. Coric is very rare in that respect because I think that most players are held back from the top by either their physical, most of the time they're physical, and then sometimes they're mental. And less so a player at that high a level is held back by their ball striking. But to me, it's the Coric forehand. And I think the forehand is just such a large part of the modern game. You need it to create offense. You need to be able to hit your forehand on the run. And if your forehand on the run is a shot that can be broken down, I just think that's such a gaping hole that Coric has had to deal with, that I think that that's one of the big problems. I think Coric is too passive sometimes, not offensive enough. When he plays Roger Federer, he's extremely offensive. He hits so heavy. He never misses an opportunity to attack. But I think that Coric does too much grinding. And I think that his forehand breaks down. So those are the main two things. But it's mostly rooted in his ball striking, which is rare. Another long comment, Caleb Pereira. Till now, forehand is his weakness. Zverev's problem as well. Okay, I don't want to get into that. Okay. How much payoff do you think Djokovic-esque guys get off the cross-court backhand exchange versus Federer? Guys like Zverev, Coric, Murray, and Nalbandian, I feel, have always won that exchange with Federer. Many a time preventing him from running around. Oh, wow. You know what? My computer is going to run out of battery. This has never happened, but I need to take a second and plug this thing in. Otherwise, I'm going to lose all of this. So hold on just a second. My apologies for this. All right. There we go. That would have been bad. I would have lost all of that. Okay. So the backhand to backhand exchange. I feel, so he feels that Federer loses the backhand to backhand with elite backhands. So let's start with that before I read further the next part about a two-hander versus a one-hander. What Federer is able to do with the backhand to backhand is normally change the pattern, alter the pattern. So whether that be, using his chip down the line, taking time away, running around with which, we all know about his footwork. He runs around his backhand probably better than anyone. And Nadal. Nadal does it so well as well. And Federer did it really well. So I think there's a lot of ways where Federer, and then of course with the chip, there's a lot of ways that Federer kind of breaks that pattern. So I kind of agree with you that if Federer's going to kind of just play a neutral cross-court backhand to backhand rally with like an Andy Murray, he's not going to ever really win that. I just think that normally Federer is okay kind of just not falling into that. And against Coric, I don't think that that's the pattern that really killed Federer. I really think against Coric it wasn't backhand to backhand. I think it was Federer getting pinned in his backhand corner, leaving a ball short in the middle of the court, and Coric attacking with his forehand. I don't really think that it was neutral backhand to backhand rallies. The superior stability, accuracy, and possibly depth the two-hander affords exploits the single-hander over the course of a match. Exploits, rather. And this might be a vital plot point in the decline/underusage of the single-hander, oh my god, in the modern game. Do you agree? So, I don't really agree. I think maybe I partially agree. I think that two-handers are, by nature, generally more stable, more accurate. They lend themselves a little bit more to depth. Sure, I think most of the best backhands in the sport are two-handers. I think that one-handers are more often the weakness in people's games, but it just doesn't have to be the case. What I want to do is I want to tie this to Federer, because there is no two-handed backhand in the world that is as versatile as Federer off the backhand wing, and I think that a lot of that has to do with hitting the one-hander. I don't have a scientific explanation for this, but I think in general, players who hit one-handed backhands have better drop shots, they have better slice backhands, they have better backhand volleys, they have better all-around touch on the backhand side. All of these things, I think, kind of go into it. Not to mention, you have guys like Thiem and Wawrinka who can hit their backhand harder, and Gasquet, although he doesn't always use it this way. I think those three guys can hit their backhand with more pace than any two-handers can, because I think when you have that left hand coming along for the ride, it limits some of the whip you can get. So I think all of those things are advantages that the one-hander has, which I think is very important to point out. So that's where I stand on one-hander versus two-hander. I don't think one is better than the other. I think with young players, I think you err on the side of two-hander. But it's really about you watch a young player's left hand. Is the left hand helping the backhand, working to help the backhand, or is it coming along for the ride and kind of holding the backhand back? So I think you need to see how a player naturally hits their backhand, and you need to watch that left hand, and you need to see if it's helping or if it's hurting. A backhand, all of the best two-handed backhand, Nishikori, Murray, Djokovic, I'd say their left arm is the principal point of those backhands technically, which is, I think, very important. So I think that's how you kind of look at should players be hitting a one-hander or a two-hander. I think it's a very natural thing. Man, you should change the mic. So I've been using this mic for like 2 years now. Well, not really, but a year and a half. And I've never seen a comment on my microphone. And then in this last video, I see 3 comments on my microphone. Wow, how did that happen? I don't understand. I've never seen a comment on my all of a sudden, there's these comments on the microphone. It's the same microphone. So, I don't know. Strange. I know most will completely shoot this down, but it makes me wonder if Roger, knowing he will have to face Novak in the final, brings up nerves and makes him lose focus. If Zverev wins, does Roger dismantle Coric? So if Zverev beats Djokovic in the semis, is what this person's saying, is what Simo is saying. Does he change his strategy? Does the fact that Novak is already into the final make Roger change his playstyle to possibly save energy? It seems like this is happening a lot in this rivalry lately. Whenever Novak is a potential opponent, Roger's level drops significantly. Just my observation. I think that the deeper you get into tournaments, the more likely Roger Federer is to lose, the more likely a Rafa Nadal will be to lose. So I think, for the most part, when we get very close to seeing these blockbuster matchups and then they don't happen, it's normally because the player met a very good opponent. That's normally why it is. I want to ask this in response to this kind of suggestion that Federer lost because Djokovic beat Zverev. What if Zverev won and then Federer still lost? Wouldn't some people be saying that Federer lost because he looked ahead? Or that Federer lost because Djokovic lost? I know that I think that I'm always under the opinion that it affected him in the 2014 U.S. Open when Djokovic lost to Nishikori in the semis and then Federer got blown out by Cilic. It's a lot of pressure when you're all of a sudden the favorite in the tournament because people around you are dropping like flies. So I don't know. For the most part, I don't buy into this. I certainly don't think that Federer was saving energy for Djokovic because when you're on the tennis court, you can't save energy. It's not, I mean, you can, but not if you're losing. You're not going to save energy if you're losing. That's not a thing. Last comment, folks. Borna Coric will get to number 1 in future and win slams. Interesting. I'm not sure about this one, especially the number 1 part. Because, like I said, ball striking, to me, is very natural. A lot of people talk about talent versus hard work. I think that hard work things you can work on is you can maximize your physical potential. And there's a lot of genetics involved, but you can maximize your physical potential. I think Coric has done that. I think you can maximize your mental potential. I think Coric has done that. I think that ball striking is something that is very natural. There's not a lot of room to all of a sudden be a world-class ball striker or, there's not a lot of room to get better or a lot worse. I think that you can't teach Fabio Fognini. You can't teach Juan Martín del Potro, Stan Wawrinka, all of the elite players in the sport, obviously, but, some of these elite ball strikers, I don't think you can train that. I think that there's something natural about the way these elite ball strikers are able to strike the ball. And I think Coric lags here. I don't think he is this as good a natural ball striker, especially with his forehand, as Tsitsipas and Zverev. And perhaps FAA, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Same could be said for Chung. Chung and Coric. I don't think their ball striking is naturally really as good. So my concern is that how much of a leap can Coric make from where he is now? So right now he's 13 in the world, and I think as time passes and naturally he gets more experience. I mean, he's still getting better, right? The question is how much better. So I think it won't be long until he's in the top 10. Then he'll be fringe top 5. And that's good enough to win a slam. It depends on the climate of tennis. But once you're fringe top 5, then you can maybe win a slam. But in terms of number 1, how big a leap can he make? And I'm a little bit curious about that, and I'm not completely bullish on this because the issue is ball striking. I'm much more likely to say, oh, this person projects to get much better if physically they're not developed and mentally they're not developed. That's where I feel like you can really make huge strides, huge improvements. Coric, it's the ball striking. How much better can his forehand possibly get? What can training fix there? What can technical adjustments fix there? Maybe a little, but how much? And that's all I got. Follow me on Twitter, @GillGross. That's @Gill with 2 L's _Gross. That's all we have for today. Hope you enjoyed this show. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.